Hi, everybody, and welcome to Gloves Off with David Singer. I guess we just missed my intro music. Just to let you know,
I didn't miss it at all.
just to let you know, the opinions of myself and my guests are not necessarily the opinions of my employer or anybody I'm associated with. So thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks for clarifying that. They are not necessarily my opinions.
Oh, they're not your opinions either.
My opinions are my opinions, and probably the right opinion.
The right opinion. Your opinions are never right. Anyway, thanks for everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Today, we are actually have two special guests, or actually one special guest and Gene. Ed Ludovici, who actually worked on the founding of Palmetto Bay, is here to talk about a little bit of Palmetto Bay history, and our former mayor, hopefully our future mayor, if he decides to run, Gene Flynn. He's just sitting there. And they're both wearing green, and I'm not wearing any green today. I'm wearing.
Well, that's because it's Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I know. I completely. Actually, I'm wearing green underwear for anybody who's interested.
It didn't start out that way.
Are you going to show us?
No, you guys get no. You guys get no show. So anyway, so this broadcast today is brought to you by Gloves Off, a new band that's going to be touring in South Florida soon. They play rock and roll from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So if you see them,
rock and roll in the 90s.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I like the rock and roll in the 90s.
Is that like EDM-R?
No, I like rock and roll. What are you talking about?
Electronic dance music.
Oh no, I hate that. Anyway, but I'm old.
Better than never been ultra, huh?
By the way, you all need to speak into the mic if you're going to talk, so everybody can hear you.
That's what everybody wants to see, a mic in front of me.
We have our lovely producer. Our lovely producer. I don't think he wants to be called lovely. Sorry about that, Sadine. We have our producer here who's going to help us out. As everybody knows, this is my second broadcast from our new studios in Coconut Grove. We no longer are broadcasting from community newspapers due to being told what I can talk about and what I can't on my own show. So that we left. We left and we came here. How's that?
Watch the bridges. Watch the bridges. Because, as far as Palmetto Bay goes, thanks to current administration, there's always more bridges going in. So
always bridges.
Be a builder, not a just.
What is I read something today that they were going to have somebody vote on a 152nd Street bridge. Did you see that? Okay, we're not going to talk about bridges anyway.
I don't know. I didn't hear that.
Let's talk about Palmetto Bay, and we'll start by giving some history, because I think it's really important to go through the history of Palmetto Bay before the next election. Because as I told Gene earlier today, and Ed does not know I'm going to say this, if I knew then what I knew now about how the administration is running Palmetto Bay, I would have not voted for incorporation. I think
how people would have voted in 2020 if they would have known now what they didn't know then.
I don't think they would have voted for. I don't think they would have voted for incorporation either. But that's my opinion. I just think that we've gotten off track from where you guys, and both of these gentlemen here actually were the driving force behind incorporation. I can say that, right? That's pretty accurate. You guys
would be an accurate statement, yes.
Unbelievable amount of time that you guys put in.
Thousands of hours.
Thousands of hours.
It was very sad when the Ludovici building went down, because that's one of two places we should have put a bronze plaque where the ideas of Palmetto Bay were hatched. One was in your office, your conference room, Ed, and the other one was
at the old Cutler Inn.
Yeah, that was a great place.
Having a drink with Denver.
We used to. What was it, Hector? Remember Hector?
Hector was our bartender. Yes.
And when David was elected into office, he tried to shut down meetings at 11 o'clock. And those meetings were actually going later than back when we met at the old Deering Estate Visitor Center. The whole reason for that was, why, Ed? So we could get out before they could lock the door and get into.
Well, they're going. Wait. Well, the reason they were going to 11 o'clock is we spent some people spent the first hour of the meetings giving out proclamations.
Well,
that's true too.
Okay.
Just coming up with a good story here in terms of the fact that we had an incentive to get out, and Hector probably had one eye outside hoping the meeting hadn't shut down, because didn't they close around 10 or 11 at Old Cutler Inn?
Where was Old Cutler Inn?
It's where Pig Floyd was.
Yeah, where Pig Floyd was across.
The steakhouse. Okay, Butch Labazan bought that property, right?
Actually, Eric Haas owns it today.
Eric owns it today, but I mean, it was a joint venture. They were supposed to.
I believe so.
Yeah, they were supposed to build
an
office
point,
building there,
but they never did.
Oh.
Well, I mean, this is an exciting show. I'm glad to have Ed here today, going through some things when Ed and I talked about, what we're going to talk about for this show. We could go for hours. So we hope to have some focus on this and go through some of the highlights, because I think there were a lot of highlights.
So you guys don't mind me asking questions, right?
So
Ask away.
You'll ask the question.
I want to know, like, when it originally, first of all, what are we in the 20th year? The 20?
Well, we're in the 20th year of having been
Incorporated, but it went back
the
how
start
far?
actually.
Yeah,
before
it
September.
starts in 1995.
Okay. And that's prior to even Pinecrest getting incorporated?
No, Pinecrest was incorporated.
Okay.
And the story goes like this. Pinecrest had incorporated, and myself, Leif Gunderson, who was vice president at the bank at the time, and a guy named Steve Crammon, who was the executive director, got together and created something called CITI. It was CITI, and it was a committee to incorporate South Dade, and basically a big city. It was going to go from Pinecrest south through Cutler Bay and basically the Bay to the Everglades. Well, that created some hackles from some folks in upper northeast Palmetto Bay. And they didn't want to have anything to do with this city of 100,000, 150,000 people or whatever it was going to be. And they started their own incorporation effort. And they had a meeting at the library at 152nd Street in US 1. And it included a group of homeowners, for the most part, from Palmetto Bay, but only north of 168th Street. So 168th Street north to 136th Street and US 1 to the Bay. Okay. I happen to live south of there. I happen to live between 184th and 168th Street. So I started going to these meetings, and I talked them into expanding the boundaries south to 184th Street, but east of 87th Avenue. Now, that got my house and my parents' house in the boundary, but it still had my office out. So eventually I talked them into including in the boundaries, because I showed them how much the commercial tax base would help them in their residential community. And we were able to talk them into going over to the busway. So when we first wrote the boundaries, it was from the busway to the Bay, 136th Street to 184th. Some negotiations with the then county commissioner for the West Perrine area, Dennis Moss. We gave up the entrance to West Perrine, and we moved back over to southbound US 1. So we do not control the western boundary of the island area. We step back over, and that's how the boundary gets drawn eventually to become Palmetto Bay. But then that's 1995, and it was 2002. There was 7 years that we did all kinds of things, including litigate against the county, take appeals against the county up to the 3rd DCA, run county commission candidates against the sitting candidate because she wouldn't come our way. So we ran Peter England.
And who was that?
Peter England, we ran against.
No. But who was he running against?
Katie Sorensen.
Katie Sorensen. Okay.
Katie Sorensen was our commissioner at the time, and she was kind of anti-incorporation. She was big county government.
Yeah.
And so we ran Peter England against her. We at least got her attention. Peter didn't beat her, but he got her attention. And eventually we get to the next step. And the next step was the county creates an ordinance in effect to create this incorporation effort.
Well, remember, this was to try to quell the quest for it by giving some local control for
Correct.
what they called the community council.
I remember the community councils because I've had
Right. Community councils were already there.
but that was just for zoning.
Well, those are the ZAB.
Right. That was the spinoff,
Yeah.
because that was a spinoff of ZAB,
Yes.
the community council was. Now, what I'm talking about, Gene, is where they created the idea that you would have to collect petitions. I believe it was 4% of the
You're right.
registered voters.
Back then.
Once you did that, then they would create a municipal advisory committee, they called it, which was called MAC. Ours was PB MAC, obviously, but Doral had a MAC, Miami Lakes had a MAC, and they were to study the feasibility of it. We were to work heavily with, I remember we worked a lot with the budget people in the county because it was a numbers
And
issue.
who was funding all this?
That was actually funded. At that point, it was funded for the county. The
Okay.
county funded their people. We didn't really have any expense on it, and mostly volunteers were sitting on that PB MAC. Gene was on the PB MAC. He was actually chairman of it. I was vice chair of PB MAC. A guy named Denzer Dempster?
Bob Dempster.
Dempster was on the MAC
Mary
with us.
Cagle.
Mary Cagle.
Wasn't Howard Tendrich on there as well?
Are any
Was
of these
Howard,
people
was
still
Howard
alive?
on there?
I believe Howard was on there.
Cagle is.
Okay.
Dempster, no.
Okay.
Tendrich is.
I don't
Okay.
know what happened with Dempster. I think he moved away, and I haven't heard.
I
from
don't
him.
know, but he was 80 then. He was an
Oh.
old guy.
I thought Hendricks died. That was just a rumor, right?
Did he? Oh, I don't know.
no,
I didn't hear that.
He's still around and
Okay.
kicking.
Okay.
There are a lot of rumors going around about people with heart conditions and everything else. So,
Sorry.
you know,
Well, long story short,
yeah.
that was what I'm saying, the process. But then what they did is they didn't even want to abide by the process, and that's why we litigated against them.
Okay. What were they demanding for that you guys litigated?
Well, we wanted them to take a vote of the people because we thought that if they would take a vote of the people and incorporation was wanted for the community, that would give us the political pressure to push them on. Okay.
Yeah.
We had to push them on politically.
Uh-huh.
Well, they wouldn't take the vote. They refused to take the vote. So we sued them to take the vote. And Judge Postman was our trial lawyer. And he actually ruled in our favor. He said, well, listen, they put it in their ordinances. That's what they're supposed to do. I think they should do it. Well, unfortunately,
remember, Merritt Steerheim was manager at the time.
right.
He was ruling. Merritt Steerheim was standing outside near the elevators, didn't come in. The TV cameras are in there. I remember going in there, Judge Postman turning his nameplate toward the camera.
No, that I didn't remember, but okay.
Yeah, I remember. It was a surrealistic day. It was a well-tried case. It was a knockdown, drag-out. Great county
Joe
attorneys.
Joe Sirota.
When you win, you always
was-
build up.
Oh,
Yeah,
your
we
opponents. You always
yeah.
build up your
So
Well,
opponents.
did,
Joe-
they, did,
Joe-
did the county appeal?
Yes, and that's what
Okay.
happened.
Okay.
And then they end up with probably one of the most county-friendly
Panels. Yeah.
panels. Chief Judge Alan, what the hell? Schwartz.
Forget
Thank you.
Schwartz.
By the way,
He
I got
was
two
the-
attorneys on both sides.
Oh
of it.
yeah.
Okay, I forgot.
And
I forgot.
anyway,
to
he
mention
was
that.
the chief judge out there
Yeah.
at the third DCA, and he's a very, very well connected to the county political
Yeah.
base. We got a great draw. Let me say this: we got a great draw when we got Postman as our trial judge because he was not politically connected like other trial judges are. Okay, because again, this is a political argument, guys. We were fighting politics here. We weren't
No, it's like the
fighting.
bridge. It's politics.
It was fight
It's
because we
about
were
politics.
actually listen. We actually sued them for mandamus, which is a very rare sort of type of lawsuit in which you are actually suing a government official
Mhm.
to mandate them to do something because they're refusing to do it in their official capacity.
And normally,
It's okay. It's a writ of
actually would be
mandamus.
a prisoner saying you were supposed to
Yeah.
calculate gain time, get me out of here.
Yeah, and let me out of prison.
and go. in
That's
there
when
and
mandamus
do
was
this.
not against county governments to hold elections. You understand? We sued them to hold. We sued
almost
them
got away
to
with
hold
it,
an
Ed.
election. We did.
We almost got away with it.
I still think we were right.
Can we take a
Oh,
large
absolutely.
review? Can we take a large review?
So, anyway, with that
Perfect.
said, because if we don't move along, we'll be here for 42 days. You understand?
Yeah. No. So what was it when you
I
you
mean,
did
I
it-
fill
no,
it in.
get- I-
We're
I'm
filling
good.
in
And
some
by the
room
way,
here.
once again, this is the beautiful Coconut Grove. If you look outside, you can see the water. The weather's a little
You might
overcast, but
even
we're all
see
having
a
a good.
couple tide changes. In
It's
the time
it's
it takes
actually
us to
yeah.
get through
It's
this
actually
material.
freezing in my office. So when you finally had the vote, which I'm sure was a non-binding
It was a non-binding
type
vote.
vote.
We
what,
had the
what
vote.
was the do you remember what the percentage was?
No, but it was high.
Well, I remember.
It was
I
high.
remember.
It was like
the-
2-1.
I remember the
Really?
elections
That's pretty
officials.
good.
Remember, we had a special election, and they told us that a special election we could count on 18 to 20% turnout. We had close to 50. I think 47%.
No, listen. I remember the buzz.
for that special
The
election.
buzz out there is everybody wanted because I remember it
Yeah,
because
it
I was
was-
living in Palmetto Bay. Everybody wanted, okay, everybody wanted to sit there and incorporate for the 66% at least. And the fact was they wanted to be control of the police. They wanted to be in control of
And
parks
zoning. And zoning.
and zoning.
Yeah, those were the major
and they wanted
issues.
lower and they wanted lower taxes or they
Yeah.
wanted reasonable taxes.
Well, they didn't want taxes
What-
to go up.
Am I? Oh, who has to talk to Mike? Me? Oh, Gene has to talk to Mike. That's
All
unusual.
right, I'll talk. Yeah.
Anyway, so everybody
Sorry.
wanted. It's okay. We're just taking.
I'm loud to begin with.
No.
So,
So everybody wanted, to be control of the police, control of zoning, control of parks, and for lower taxes. Okay, so where are we now?
Well, I remember that was one of the promises we made during
Yeah.
incorporation.
Yeah.
We talked about that because we were a donor community, we could recapture those taxes and do more for our dollars without raising taxes above that of the unincorporated Miami-Dade. Do you remember that?
The whole idea was, and again, sir, we negotiated mitigation with the county for months, years. I don't know how long it
And
was.
didn't you guys have to pay a certain amount
Yes,
of
we
money? for
did.
$1
litigation?
million.
It
And
was
then
$1
you
million.
sat there and then you
It was $1
sued,
million.
and then you turn around and sue and got the money back, or did you ever get the money back?
We did get the money back.
Yeah.
We went
We-
through with Doral
Yeah,
and Miami
Doral-
Lakes, but that's
Doral and Miami Lakes joined us in that lawsuit after their incorporation to argue that, again, they could not treat one municipality different than another. But that was actually after we incorporated. That was done under his first administration as mayor. And I wasn't involved by then, because once the charter, I stayed actively involved through the writing of the charter and the adoption of the charter. At which point, then I personally stepped back. I'm in the background. Obviously, people want to talk to me, but I'm no longer taking an active
Yeah,
role.
but you were
out there.
at. Listen, I got involved in Palmetto Bay after what was going on with Palmer Trinity. I mean, you were in the audience during that hall. You,
Oh,
you and
I
your
was.
lovely wife.
I was.
Okay, you can give
my
her a shout out
wife.
if you
Well,
want.
my wife,
Yeah.
wife, who was a board member at Palmer Trinity, and fought long and hard. And again, the Palmer Trinity was 5 years of divisiveness in this community.
Not by the way, not nearly as divisive, believe it or not, as the community is now with the bridge and some of the other things going on.
Okay, I now let
I
me
mean,
say that,
you're
David.
completely
In
removed.
fairness, I have really pulled back the
Yeah.
last
Oh, I
5
know.
years.
Correct. I told you. I've been when you walked in here. I go,
I-
"Oh my God, you look
I-
great."
I personally have just pulled back.
something you never hear.
No, he lost. Wait.
No,
Tell
no,
everybody.
no, I'm not-
Wait. Seriously,
No.
this
let him
man
go on
right
that.
here has lost 80 pounds.
Yeah,
He is a shell of his former self.
I'm happy to say I'm below 150 pounds.
Now he can actually sit and coach, and he doesn't have to sit in first class.
Oh
Oh, David,
I'm sitting in
David,
first class.
David.
Trust me. The peanuts are better up there.
So you were there during the whole Palmer, and then you kind of pulled back. You pulled back once after incorporation, then you pulled
Yeah.
back after Palmer.
But as I said today in the office, I have not met our new city manager. Now think about
Interesting.
that. I have not met or shook hands with Nick yet. Okay.
He's a great guy.
The first three I helped choose.
Yeah.
All three of them I was actively
Yeah.
involved in getting them where they got to become city managers.
You were always a go-to guy. for
okay.
us.
But this guy, I don't know
He's
him.
he's a nice guy, but he's a little bit.
I don't know.
It's more. He's more under the thumb of the mayor than he is the council. But
Fine.
I mean that happens. That's
That
politics.
happened. That's politics.
But
That's
Ed,
politics.
Ed, I just want to pipe in here a minute. You're being a little modest. You are in the records of Palmetto Bay as the initial clerk of the village of Palmetto Bay for our first meeting.
You have a
True.
library named after you, for God's sakes.
Well,
True, but that's a different issue. But go ahead.
and then you, in the hard work you did with the first charter, you went down and worked with Cutler Bay on their charter as well.
I did.
That was quite a compliment that going down there. There was a time when Cutler Bay followed what we were doing and wanted what we had. Now it's kind of the shoes on the other foot recently.
Oh, so anyway, so let me interrupt you guys. So if you want to call in and ask any questions, unfortunately, I only have two.
And we're not
Yeah,
giving
but-
away this T-shirt.
If
by
you
the
want
way.
to, ask either of these guys any questions, you can call in while we're live. Anyway, at 786-584-7665. I can barely see that. 786-584-7665. And if you want to send an email, you can send an email while we're live on Facebook. Can you see if anybody, Sadine, can you see if anybody's actually sent us any emails? This is great. We're here we go. What's that say? Social comments. Okay. So that's the deal. So, okay. So continue.
Just start up right again. Just like
Okay.
Okay.
But I think we ought to talk about some of the storied memories we have. I still remember your office. One of the worst jobs we had in incorporating was the day that we went through Miller Publishing and we got all those newspapers to distribute on people's lawns. Your entire conference room was full of those newspapers. And you would think it's not that hard to fold and stuff.
We fold and stuffed 8,000 newspapers. loaded them on a Saturday morning before the incorporation the vote on incorporation on Tuesday. We had a special edition community newspaper. Big headline, front page, all about Palmetto Bay. The rest
That's
was
when
the
people were
typical.
actually reading newspapers.
And we got in the back of 5 pickup trucks. We created zones, and we hit a paper on every driveway in Palmetto Bay on Saturday morning before the election.
That was a lot of fun. Well,
Okay.
it wasn't fun folding and stuffing,
We
but I
folded
was
them and
sat in the back
stuffed them,
of the,
and I mean a conference room that's as big as the room we're in right now, and the place was stacked with newspapers.
So the question was he giving orders or was he actually helping?
I was in the back of the truck
No.
afterwards.
Because he was
throwing.
like, he's like management material, you
He-
know?
No, we all did. Listen, I owned a pickup truck, so
Yeah.
I drove, but I had 2 people. I had 2 people in the back of each pickup truck because we put them in boxes in the back, and they were just sitting on the back throwing.
No, that's funny.
And I'll tell you, we all worked hard. We all worked diligently on this, and the effort was there. You know, the sign that Gene showed here a minute ago.
yeah, taking some abuse.
You
Just
know,
spent some
we
time
had to get-
in the.
I think it needs to be. I
we
think it
had
needs
to
to be.
get.
Hold on,
Here's
can we
the
flip the? Can we flip the camera for a second? There we go. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Here was the vote yes on Palmetto Bay election. That was the first election that created the impetus for going forward. And then the second election that you see there, the September 10th one, was the actual adoption of the charter. And it was adopted September 10th of 2002. And that was the election day. And that was technically the birthday of our city, is September 10th, 2020,
Wow.
2002, excuse me.
I tried to find here for today.
So
'cause
we're not quite at the 20-year anniversary. The 20-year anniversary is
Around the
coming
corner.
up in
Yeah.
about 6
Come on.
months.
I remember, you know, let's admit it, some of us watch shows we're not always proud of, but I remember the show Roseanne many years ago, and little DJ did a show on the incorporation of Lanford, and they showed the school play, and he's the clerk sitting there, and 2 other guys walk in suits, and he says, "Do you have the incorporation papers for the city of Lanford?" "Yes, I have the incorporation papers for the city of Lanford." There, stamp, over and done. That was not the story of Palmetto.
Was that,
That was
what was that
not-
like the
No.
easy way out, huh?
No,
Yeah, it didn't fit into a half-hour sitcom.
No,
Oh, that's funny.
not at all. The 22 minutes in commercials. No, that was not Palmetto Bay. 7 years, angst, people moving on, passing away, coming back.
Yeah.
So
A
tell me
lot
about,
of bonding, and I think we created some good friends out of that too in regards to putting this thing together.
Yeah.
so tell me about the charter. Who put together the charter?
Okay. I can answer that one really well.
Okay.
All right. So after that vote that's taken in February,
And by the way, the charter is basically, you know, the Constitution of
it is
Palmetto
the
Bay.
Constitution.
Constitution,
Yeah,
and people
I-
should follow it, although it's
Yeah.
not followed today as it should be.
But we have a Bill of Rights in there that allows any person in our village to sue an official that's not abiding by it, by the way.
Well, I'm
For
sure
what it's worth.
For what it's worth.
Okay. Let's talk about the charter. So what
And
happens
by the way, I
is
didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know I could sue.
Read the
for
Bill of
them not-
Rights.
Okay, thank you.
in February 2002, the vote is taken to incorporate. But now we have to create a structure of government. So again, the county commission, primarily County Commissioner Katie Sorensen, supported by her other 12 commissioners, appoints a charter committee. The charter committee for Palmetto Bay consisted of myself,
Mhm.
Tom Ringel, Paul Schwepp, Steve Yenzer.
And Mary Cagle was
And
on there as well.
no.
wasn't she was not.
Oh my God, you're doing a great job with names, though. I can't remember what happened yesterday.
Hold on a second. Who am I missing?
It's okay. We'll talk while he's thinking.
I know I had that under the village.
I had it.
history
Hold it.
at
I
one
had it in
point.
my head. No, I had it, and then he said something, and it dropped my.
Sorry.
Schwepp, Yenzer, Ringel. Oh, it was
Was
Cagle.
Martin on there?
No, it was Mary Cagle. It was Mary Cagle. Mary Cagle and Mary Cagle. I thought Mary Cagle for some reason
Okay,
was
but
on
you said
TV.
12. That's only 5.
No,
there's only
there are 5.
Oh, 5.
Five.
Okay. I thought you
There were
said
5
okay.
of us.
Okay.
There were 5 of us.
And anybody
Steve
from the county?
Yenzer, no, because this is an internal document.
Okay.
Now there's county support. For
Uh-huh.
instance, we had a county attorney,
Okay.
not a county attorney. We had a county staff person work with us. We actually had to hire our own attorney. But let me get the people down first. When we organized that meeting, I ended up becoming the chairman. There was an attorney by name of Lynn Danheiser who had worked on the charter in Pinecrest. So I reached out to Lynn Danheiser because I had become pretty close with Evelyn Greer, who was the first mayor at that point in Palmetto in Pinecrest. And Lynn agreed to be our attorney. She represented our committee, our charter writing committee, as our attorney. And we eventually pay her a fee. The fee gets paid by the city once it incorporates.
Okay.
So she bills time. And then at the end, she gets paid, but it's 2 years for her to get paid. But that's how it works in these incorporations. So we hire her and we draft the charter. The charter is drafted, sent to the county commission, and the county commission initially rejects it and makes us go back and change something. I don't remember what the hell it was.
How's that possible?
Because in effect, they get to set the election, and they weren't going to set the election with the terms the way they were written. Okay, because there was a whole provision. There's an actual whole chapter added to our charter that doesn't exist in any other charter in Dade County that had to do with certain mitigation issues. This is where we agreed to pay them $1 million in mitigation fees. This is where we agreed to stay part of the library system, the fire system, and the garbage solid waste department.
Yes,
we would never ever leave those three. It is where we agreed to pay into, at that time, a special policing fund. Okay. Because even though we were going to have municipal police officers here, they wanted us to pay in to cover the county's cost of the crime lab, the bomb squad, the SWAT teams, the things that we call specialized police services that a small municipality could never afford to have. But if a bomb showed up in Palmetto Bay, we want a bomb squad to show up. So we get the county. So we would pay for that. A lot of this stuff has gone away over the years because of various litigation, but this was all in our original charter. Long story short, they finally approved the charter and they set that September 10th date for that vote. At which point, I don't know, we have about maybe 60 days now to get that election up and running. And that's when that next round of signs come up and we're getting signs and T-shirts and just like running when you ran for your seat on the city commission and he ran for mayor, same kind of campaign. Yard signage, T-shirts, volunteers, nothing changes. The difference is we weren't supporting a person, we were supporting a policy or
Corporation.
an incorporation proposal.
So wait, let me ask you a question. So do you remember anybody who was so anti-incorporation that they had their own committee that actually went and fought incorporation?
Well, there was a moneyed group, and they actually put banners up in one of the interesting areas was on Thalata. No way, Palmetto Bay. Remember that?
There was some, but not very highly organized.
So they weren't vocal.
No, like I remember one guy took a sign and put it in his yard saying, "Vote no for Ludoviciville."
No, that's nice to take a picture.
Okay,
You enjoyed that
one.
one.
I had to go. Oh yeah, I didn't steal it. I didn't steal it, but I did go take a picture of it.
I actually like that. You did,
I did take a
frame
picture
that.
of it. I took a picture of it because everybody and their mother that was anti-incorporation accused Ed Ludovici of wanting to build a fiefdom for himself, that I was going to become mayor for life.
How'd that turn out?
Unlike Gene became mayor for life, not me. I never held political office after that. I did sit on a couple of appointed boards at the request of various politicians, but I did not have any direct political influence after that. And it did not become Ludoviciville. And quite frankly, yes, there is a park named Ludovici Park, but the reason that park is named Ludovici Park, and I'm going to let Gene tell the story because he was actively there with Ed Feller, who was working it at the time. But the village needed something, and the Ludovici family provided it. Let's use those words.
I heard you donated the park, right? Is that like cut and
I'll let Gene
cut and
tell the
cut and
story.
dry?
I don't want to tell my own story.
That's a great story of how Ludovici Park came to be. First of all, there's lots of articles on it. I think I even have a blog post somewhere on it, and I've got lots of photos. That was land that was taken from a cult. I'll call it a cult. Celestia Delamore, yes. And we went back there, and they had started to place a little island off the bay. They cut through the mangroves with a beautiful walkway through it, and the Environmental Crimes Division of Miami-Dade County took it. Well, we didn't exactly have a commissioner at the time who was hand everything over to them for free, like maybe Miami Lakes had. We had one that wanted fair value to make sure that the county got value for the assets that we purchased, because some of the purchased land we got from the county was over where Palmetto Bay Park is now. 7 acres of that was purchased, but we had to purchase the land there that was taken away. That was $350,000, but that wasn't taxpayer money, was that, Ed? No. We got a very healthy donation from a pioneer family in the village of Palmetto Bay. Multiple generations of Perrine area attorneys stepped forward and made sure the residents of the village of Palmetto Bay didn't have to front that on their own. And it was very proud moment when we were able to cut the ribbon and name it after the benefactors. You know, so far often you get the taxpayers that'll pay for something like a stadium, and then somebody comes in with the last $2 million on $1 billion stadium and they get naming rights. But no, it was my privilege, and it was a proud moment when we were able to name that facility after somebody who actually stepped forward, took it off the taxpayers' shoulders, and put the money, their actual sweat equity, and said, "Hey, we want to do some great things for this community. Let us front for this park." It was a perfect marriage in terms of both the financial contribution as well as the contribution that was made in service to the community that led to that beautiful facility of Ludovici Park. Now, when you look at it, I do want to go a little off track here a little bit.
So wait,
Ed.
let me ask one question. How long has your family lived in what is now Palmetto Bay?
Well, they had some time in Pinecrest too.
Well,
Let's just call it the greater Palmetto Bay area.
I grew up
Yeah.
in Pinecrest personally. However, my father opened his office on Fern Street in 1959. Fern Street is in the island,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
right there, almost across from City Hall, is where he opened his first office in 1959. And we've never had an office outside of Palmetto Bay. All 3 of my offices, well, 4 if you include even my temporary space after Hurricane Andrew, all 4 of my physical locations have been in Palmetto Bay.
So when they talk about natives, your family is really native.
1959.
1959. Well, I mean that's just the office. If you lived in Pinecrest, you're really natives, right?
Well, and
Well, no, because at that point, when you talk about me, I am a 5th generation Floridian, not Miamian, but Floridian. I trace a great-great-grandfather being born in North Florida in 1846, 1 year after we became a state in March of 1845.
Wow.
So 1 year
I am
after
not
we became
quite
a
a
state?
pioneer Floridian because I can't trace back before that. Probably his parents were here, but I can't find that in the data. But I found his birth certificate, and I am a 5th generation Floridian. We are probably as rare as hen's teeth.
Hen's teeth.
Hen's teeth.
But it was nice back then having the Ludovici family step forward. You know, it wasn't a case of elected officials taking village assets, things that were paid by the residents, and doling it out for political favors. To the contrary, this is a group that did favors for us and stepping forward. So again, Ed, thank you for
all the people that said Ed Ludovici was going to get rich on the village. I want you to know it's cost me a shitload of money.
Oh, and time. Forget about that. The time.
Oh, the time
is just
is
overwhelming.
immeasurable.
Yeah. I mean,
The time I don't know how to measure. The dollars was a boatload.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people now currently sitting on the government and affiliated with it that don't appreciate the sweat equity that was put into it, don't appreciate the promises that were made.
Gene, remember, I
the
donated
same
$10,000 to that campaign over there. The day that we were ready to incorporate, I stepped up with a $10,000 check to the committee. Okay, so that we could buy the signage, buy the crap we needed to run this election. I've always put money up. Okay, I've never been short with my wallet. Okay, if it was needed to get the job done, we made sure the resources were there to make sure it happened. Let's put it that way.
That's great. That's a great story, by the way. I didn't know. All that.
It's great, and it was a great spot for the library. I remember we had people fighting the library, saying that bricks and mortar were dead. I think that library has served some great community events there. It's more than just,
and it's well used. I'll tell you, I
Incredibly
go
well
there
used.
every Tuesday because our Rotary Club meeting meets upstairs in the community room, and the library itself. And we're talking midday Tuesdays, and there will be 6, 7, 10 vehicles out there utilizing the library portion of the park. And another thing, again, let's give Ed Feller his share
and
of the
John
credit
Breeder as
here,
well.
okay? But at the end of the day, they negotiated in that very first administration that Gene was the mayor of, and Ed was the District 1 representative. They negotiated a deal where the county rented the library from us and paid 100% of the bond price that the city had to use to build the building. So in effect, the city got the land donated by the Ludovici family. They bonded the money, but then in order to pay the interest and the repay that bond is 100% being paid by the county through a rent agreement on the library. And so the residents of Palmetto Bay had the use of that park for, in effect, $0.
well, and
Somebody else,
And by the way,
for other people's money.
and
Let's put it this way,
yeah,
someone else was paying for it.
And by the way,
And not
that-
zero money,
if-
but other people
if
are
you
paying
don't
for
know, if you don't know where the library is, it's off Old Cutler Road and
176.
176, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
And I gotta tell you, that
176.25, I think, is the
That
address.
library is so much nicer than 152nd Street.
Oh.
It's like night and day. It's
Just
like
look at
night
the
and
facility.
day.
I mean, we've got a beautiful piece of Brito art
Yep.
that sits out here in front of it. I mean, it's just a beautiful little, it's a passive park. There's no baseball fields or that type of stuff, but it's got a little walking path,
Mm-hmm.
not real long, but go over there. It's got a gazebo. You could go out and read a book. And obviously you've got a library and a community room that's available I understand they make it available for not-for-profits for free. And it's available for other people for, like, wedding showers or baby showers, that kind of stuff on a nominal fee that they pay to the village.
Well, that was the thing. What we've had there, you've mentioned Rotary, and that's been a great event there. The Palmetto Bay Garden Club, which I was proud to see start under
They
the
met there?
administration.
They still do.
continue to
They
meet
still
there.
are meeting
Yep,
there.
they still
Okay.
do that.
We've had Southwood has had a fundraiser there where they had and sharing with the parking across the street. We've had some great events there through some of our other members of the community. We had a food and rock show there. We've had Palmetto Drama did the
Forgot
Palooza
about the drama show.
there. The
Forgot
drama
about
show
the
that
drama
was
show.
incredible.
You're right.
We had I think it was six years or more
That
ago.
was-
We had the Irish Festival out there many days ago.
I
There,
gotta tell you, if I have
been
only
well used.
one bitch,
That's
about-
what we
if I got-
incorporation.
if I got one bitch about that, is the elevator's too slow. But
So,
that's such a
look,
that is such a wait, stop.
no,
That's such a minor
I gotta
bitch.
tell the story
So
because
slow.
I can hear
That's
hear
why I call them the
Ed's-
steps.
I can hear Ed Ludovic. I mean, I can hear Ed Silva right now. But I remember I was
Is
at
it Ed's fault?
I was at a League of Cities.
Blame
I
Ed.
was at a League of Cities event,
Nah,
heading
Ed's
up
a
to
nice
the
guy.
27th floor, and I texted him starting now. And then we got to the 27th floor. I said, Ed, I did the 27th floor in half the time.
By the way,
getting
forget
from
that.
first to
I
second floor.
celebrated a birthday in that elevator. That's
How
how
long you were there?
long I was
Probably
in it. That's
two.
how long
It
I
is.
was in it.
Listen, the
It's the
elevator
slowest-
is so slow that
How slow is it?
unless I'm carrying something upstairs, I walk up the steps The hell
Oh no,
with it.
so do I.
I just run up those steps because I can be up those steps in
it's
in
crazy.
10 seconds.
But
And
Ed, what you're missing
elevators
is
is a
why
2-day
remember-
trip.
remember one of the other initiatives I had that I wish was continued was the Get Fit Palmetto Bay, and that was really an incentive. I mean, let's face it, it was designed that way to incentivize people walking up the stairs for cardiac health. Getting
So that's
back
why
again to
that,
the
that,
cardiac
so that's
health.
You're
so
so
that's why,
full of shit,
that's-
Gene.
so
Your
that's why
eyes
the
are
other-
turning brown, okay?
No, but
Sorry, I ain't buying that
I ain't
story.
buying it either.
I ain't buying. Listen, I ain't buying what you're selling, buddy.
Well, you know,
By
You
the
know,
way, you notice how I bring
there's
the
a-
one
there's
thing,
a-
the only problem with that whole development or that whole park and the library is the elevator, and everybody's like, "You're right, okay." It's
Yeah.
like it's awful.
you were good at finding that scab.
that one
and picking
scab
at
and
it.
picking at it, right?
But yeah, again, getting back to
That's 'cause they
Ludovici,
fixed the
what
other
a
problem.
what a great community. We had the Battle of the Bands there one year
Oh yeah, with the high
Battle.
schools.
with the high schools. That was a
Yeah,
truly fun event. Again, the drama we've
I
had.
remember the
oh,
Battle of the Bands.
when we partnered with Baptist with the Get Fit Palmetto Bay. It was usually the starting. Everything was done there, and I would be remiss in talking about it. Was one of our usual starting points for the Sunday afternoon Tri-County
Right.
Baptist Health Run Club.
Let's put it this way: there's no question that we at the time that we put that park in, we needed a park down in the southeast portion of the city. We didn't have Thalata.
And you
at the
did not
time.
have
Well,
Thalata,
Thalata
okay.
didn't exist at that
Yeah.
time. Thalata's I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years later, something like that. Do you know when
We got some good stories on that one. We'll
Yeah,
have
well,
to
that's a
bring,
different-
let's
that's
bring
a-
you back
well,
for
well,
that
well,
one.
let's
story
bring you back
another
for that
day.
one, 'cause
Yeah.
I got some good stories
But
about the Thalata too.
It is.
Then we
it
should
is
talk
what
about
it
that.
is.
Let's do
Yeah.
that. Let's do that
You
one
want to do
sometime.
Thalata? Go ahead.
Well,
No,
wait,
no,
not
let's
do it
do
now.
that
We'll do
another
it. We'll do it
day,
another day
fine.
because
Because
I
we've
got some
got
great
some
stories
great
about.
stories
I
on
got
that.
some great stories about the Thalata.
But getting back to that again, it has really served the purpose. It met a need. I do want to address one item that is constantly the misinformation has been put out there. Again, in the allegation of the 22 acres of the Palmetto Bay Village Center, one of the things that was passed is we also had another contribution that was left out, and that was the Palmetto Bay Village Center through Scott Silver, and that had donated. We have a 99-year lease for the parking that is partially on the Palmetto Bay Village Center land. That is a 99-year certain lease. And in fact, they had donated. They said, "Oh, after 10 years, it expired." No, the only thing that expired was they were giving us, I think, 5 or 10,000. I think it was 5,000 a year for 10 years to use toward that park. So we got. Not only did they give us the land under a
They gave
99-year
you
lease,
operating money.
they gave us operating
Hey,
money.
you know how that? Wait, you got
So
a
that
90
was a time when we worked hard and tried to figure out what we can bring to the taxpayers instead of what the taxpayers can bring to the elected officials. And that was
Oh,
that was Camelot.
that's my problem. Okay, so I try to keep this. I'm trying to keep this very positive, but that's my problem because it's more about what we can do for the elected officials in Palmetto Bay now than what the elected officials can do for the residents.
Well, we didn't have to do selfies back then because we had ribbon cuttings to do. Remember the ribbon cutting for the amphitheater and the library center when you were front and center for that?
Does anybody ever use the amphitheater anywhere?
Well, you know, one of the best things we had there, and I think it moved down to the South Dade Cultural Center, was one of the best things we had was one of our special events, the open mic night.
Oh,
And we had Gary Sisler, and I spoke to his daughter. He had passed away a little while ago. I spoke to his daughter at a Christmas time party, and I was saying that was one of my favorite things when he came out, and for open night, he gave advice.
oh, that's great.
And he came to the mic, and we're like, oh boy, here we go. But you know what? It was entertaining. It was great. The kids were transfixed by that. I miss Gary. He was a great opponent to things. He came out and he argued against the baseball fields. He lived right near there with Garth Webster and all that. And I remember they didn't want the baseball field coming
Baseball or
in
softball?
at Coral Reef Park.
Oh, okay.
And somebody said that they were afraid that one of the balls was going to come and break the window of their house. And two things with that is,
No, but
number
they always
one,
had the baseball
I
fields
was
there,
going to
didn't they?
personally pay for any window that was
Yeah.
broken on the condition that I got that baseball back and get it signed, because anybody could put a baseball through a window from where that field was going to be a
In the
Hall
major
of
leagues.
Famer
It was going to be in the major leagues.
Yeah.
So I wanted that ball. I wanted to get it signed and be willing. And then the other thing I said, I almost couldn't vote on that. If that opponent would have said that if you put that in there, I'm going to have to sell my house, I would have had to recuse myself because my wife would have killed me had I not put an offer immediately on that house. One of the nicest houses in Palmetto Bay in terms of the side yard comes right out in the Coral Reef Park. What a location. And so that was a funny aside that I talk about here and
Yeah.
there. It's the first time I've talked about it on the air. But we've had some great times, but times were different back then. We were very folksy, very focused. We could disagree without being disagreeable. In fact, even here, I'm looking, and let me get Ed back to his big sandbox of the charter. I'm looking here. This isn't probably going to make anybody happy, but again, there was one opponent to the charter who launched a campaign against the charter, Dr. Marcia Matson. And again, I don't think it had anything to do with ill will. These are two different opinions.
Stop. We got to go back to that.
These are two different. We will, but these are two different opinions.
Yeah,
two different opinions trying from two different directions to get to the best city we could create. And
so explain to me how Marcia Matson was an opponent to the charter, because I always thought that she was engaged in the incorporation process.
She was part of our steering committee.
Okay.
She was on the community council at the time.
At the very end, she breaks from the steering committee. The steering committee consisted of about 20 people, more or less. And she breaks. And frankly, that was it. I don't know why, because frankly, I didn't have any. Listen, I wasn't going in her direction.
What did she break about?
It was mitigation.
She broke because she didn't want to pay the mitigation. And my attitude was, let's pay the $1 million and get out, guys. We'll worry about the mitigation later. And you know what? I was right. Because here's the truth. Get out, get incorporated, and hire your own goddamn attorneys. Now you have a pool of money to do it with instead of, by the way, the litigation. You know who paid the filing fees for the litigation? Raise my hand. Ludovici and Ludovici, my law firm, paid them. Okay.
And your dad was a plaintiff.
And my dad was the lead plaintiff. Yeah. Okay. My point is, all I did was pay money. And now all of a sudden, I'm looking at this thing. We're almost at the finish line. We've been at it for 7 freaking years. And Marcia wants to vote down it because she doesn't want to pay the mitigation. And I'll tell you, I broke with Marcia at that point, and now I've broken with her on a number of other political issues since then. And frankly, I don't need to talk to Marcia anymore.
Okay, so let me ask a question.
Well, but again,
I'm gonna have to
wait, because I'm sorry.
So
wait, because I'm curious about this, because she always says that she was part and she was helped.
She was part.
Okay,
and she did.
But did she actually support, or because she's on the council right now, did she support or not support incorporation of the Village of Palmetto Bay?
She was
supported the incorporation
Palmetto Bay
without mitigation, and my attitude finally got to the point where let's pay the mitigation and move on, and we'll fight them down the road.
Because again, it's like the bridge. It's like
a losing proposition.
It's like the bridge issue. Yeah. It's not a legal issue. It's a political
issue.
And that's the way you've got to approach it. And that's why we didn't have a bridge for so many years in Palmetto
So
Bay.
Do you think she voted for incorporation, or she
issue.
voted against incorporation?
I think she voted. She voted for incorporation.
The day of the election?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know what she voted. I don't know. She probably voted against it.
Because if she didn't want the mitigation,
I believe that Marcia would be true to herself and would have voted against it.
See, that's a question. I have no reason to believe
that. I have no reason. You're going to have to ask her directly.
I will, because
I don't know the answer.
Because she's running again for District 3.
Well, I don't know the answer.
So she needs to fess up whether she voted for incorporation.
I don't know,
because it's absolutely amazing that she voted against incorporation.
Wait.
And then she ran for council by saying that she was all for incorporation.
Let's get on a couple other things though too, that's because fine. I think a couple other interesting points. Let's talk, Ed, because we were involved in the negotiation with these areas. One quick thing I want to throw out there, and maybe we can get back to it. But if you recall, the Palmetto Bay Village Center was in play back when we were incorporating. And one of the things that we negotiated with the county, and that was one of the holdups there on the day of the county vote to move forward, was we negotiated a carve out that if the Palmetto Bay Village Center sold and went to nonprofit, because there were some schools, University of Miami and some other schools, they were looking at buying it.
Correct. And there was at that time, it was valued at by $18 million piece of real estate on our books.
I wish I would have bought that.
Yeah, well, Scott did, and he paid about $18 million for it, by the way.
Replacement value of over $80 million.
Yeah, that's crazy. Seriously. But there was a lot of talk.
Well, that's because of hurricane.
Well, there was a lot of talk. Burger King had left. Burger King had moved up to Blue Lagoon.
I got that.
And here it was vacant. But the problem is, if like the University of Miami had bought it, now it goes off the books.
Oh, and there's no tax revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was going to happen was that if we're paying the county $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if that property comes off the books, the taxes on that property come off this $1 million. Okay. So that again, the taxpayers of Palmetto Bay aren't getting stuck with a large, well, actually the single largest piece of real estate in Palmetto Bay at the time, at least taxable real estate in Palmetto Bay at the time, okay, was that Village Center. So it was a major consideration, and it took, I mean, we let's put it this way. We protected collectively, we protected the residents of Palmetto Bay in the event that it had. As it turned out, it did not. Today, what's its assessed value today?
I don't know.
Anybody know?
I don't
I'd
know.
have to
I know
look
that they're going
back
to.
up,
I know
but
that they're
it's-
going to be suing the village really soon.
Well, that's a different
But
issue.
getting back to and,
But,
and
I'm,
I
but
and
today, I
would've-
don't know. It's a $50 million piece of real estate
Yeah.
today. You know what I'm saying?
So whatever they, you
But
know,
getting-
Whatever it is,
But
30
getting,
million, 40
getting
million, I
back to
don't know.
that, it wouldn't have been just a recalculation at 1 mil. We actually would have made a little extra relief off that money through that carve
if it had happened, but it
So-
never happened.
So that was one thing. And then remember, we had 2 areas that wanted to opt out of Palmetto Bay. One was Kings Bay, and they did opt out, and Coral Gables did vote to take them. I remember Mayor Slesnick at the time was one of the 2 votes to not include them in. And that's part of the reason why we had the No Way Palmetto Bay. We had negotiated with them that they would get to choose and have an election, because they had tried to annex
Yeah.
before, and the county wasn't just
Our
holding.
charter provided for a future elect. Listen, when we passed the charter in September, Kings Bay was part of Palmetto Bay. But in our charter, we provided a provision where they get a second election.
oh, so
And they could elect out.
Okay.
And if they elected out, they were allowed to leave and go to court. They could not go back to the county. They either were going to be part of Palmetto Bay or they were going to become part of Coral Gables. They were not going to be left as a hole in the donut
Interesting.
under no circumstances.
And,
Okay.
and
So in effect, they had already become part of Palmetto Bay with the adoption of the charter, but there was a portion in the charter that allowed them then to opt into and eventually they end up in Coral Gables.
Which is
But-
funny, because now they come to our meetings and tell us what to do as far as the FPNO property. I can't tell you how many meetings.
Tell them to go. Tell them.
No,
Tell
honestly.
them to go. Tell them to go pound sand.
Yeah, but the deal is that when they come in and they start bitching about FPNO, and you've been around and watched this. I mean, the council actually listens to them like they're taxpaying residents of Palmetto Bay.
well, but the funny thing about that is Palmetto Bay, under all administrations, have been much tougher on that FP&L
Yeah.
property. Because remember, when I was there, it was when
Yeah.
we originally started the 1 unit per acre
Mhm.
ordinance on that. But what did Coral Gables do with Deering Bay? Remember, Deering Bay could have been within the village of Palmetto Bay's area. That was the first carve out.
That was an early carve
Early
out.
carve out.
As a matter of fact, that what's his name?
By the way, we got 10 minutes. We got
no,
10
we don't.
minutes.
You own the clock. We can go
who's
as
the
long
guy-
as we want to.
Who's the guy? Who
Go
was
Jeb Bush's partner, Codina.
Cabina? Thank
Yeah.
you. He, of course, had great political influence.
Oh.
at the
Yeah, he
county,
knew a few people.
Okay,
Yeah,
he
just-
knew a
oh,
few people.
oh, yeah.
He
Like to see that Rolodex.
Listen, he
Yeah.
snapped his fingers.
Yeah.
By the time he snapped his fingers, to the time Deering Bay was in the city of Coral Gables was about 6 months. Boom, it happened. And the funny thing is, the county keeps telling us one of the reasons they're stalling incorporation, they don't want to lose these high valued neighborhoods
Yes.
to incorporation and get stuck with all the low value neighborhoods. Okay, this was their
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
argument. It was an
I
economic
remember that
argument. And yet one of the poorest neighborhoods at the time, Miami Gardens, has become its own city, by the way. Interestingly
Yeah.
enough. Okay. And some very, 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 very poor cities in this in our community, things like Opelika, Florida
Mhm.
City. Okay. Nobody's looking to de-incorporate them, interestingly enough. So it's not an economic argument. Okay. They like to think it's an economic argument, but there are plenty of cities that are low socioeconomic that operate perfectly fine. Okay.
Well, I want to say that about.
So at the end of the day, what Codina was able to do was snap his fingers, get every county commissioner to stand up straight, get everybody in Coral Gables to stand up straight and salute him, and boom, it went in so fast that our heads were spinning because we could not fight that. We did not. Well, first of all, we had a weak county commissioner and a county commissioner that was basically against our political ambitions. So she couldn't slow that, and she sure as hell wasn't going to stop Codina
No.
because she couldn't.
By the way, I when I was a kid, I used to go to so many bar mitzvahs at Kings Bay Country Club. I mean, I remember that whole. You were around during that, right? It was. I remember that. I remember that country club like it was yesterday.
I've had events there.
What-
I've been to
Where do
events
you go to
there.
high school?
I went to Palmetto.
Palmetto, what year?
Graduated in '80.
80?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're a year behind me. I'm a 79 grad. Okay.
Well,
You're an 80 grad.
I'm an 80 grad.
Yeah, because you two are, so you guys
He's gonna
graduate
go to
this.
Palmetto.
No,
No,
I
he
was
went
on
to
the other side of the
Southwest,
tracks.
He was
You went
at
to
Killian?
Southwest?
Southwest.
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 He's a rattler. What are you guys? Snakes?
Eagle.
Eagles.
No, that was,
Oh,
that
no.
was
Oh,
South Miami.
that was
you're
South
thinking.
And
Miami
I want
was
you to know.
the
I
rattler.
want you to show. Split. I want you to see. Okay, who looks younger?
Oh,
I mean,
come on, man.
seriously. Who
Hey.
looks younger out of all of us? Well, you look great though. I mean,
Me?
You.
I'll get you out on a bike. We'll see.
Okay,
who's
yo,
got
no,
the-
you're younger internally. I mean,
And
I'm not younger internally. I just got a prettier face.
I'm an internal one. I'm internally young.
I'm
Yeah.
I've heard that being eternally young. I've never been internally young.
But let's so the carve outs I thought were interesting. Paradise Point stayed in.
Ultimately, they wanted out. I remember Steve Siegfried of Siegfried Rivera,
Steve.
who you know Steve.
Yeah.
Well, Steve was my was my construction law professor when I was in law school. So, Steve, I'm aging you a lot because I've been out of law school almost 40 years.
Steve, yeah. If Steve's watching
35
this,
years.
if Steve's watching this, I haven't talked to him in a while. But hey, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, Steven, if you see it,
I'll give you a shout
welcome,
out,
my
Steve.
buddy.
Yeah.
And he approached me, and I said, "Well, Steve, that creates a lot of issues." And eventually, they backed off. And I think today
Well,
they're happy to be part of Palmetto Bay.
However, if they weren't a part of Palmetto Bay, think of how much better our flood insurance would be. They are on a unique piece of property.
They are.
It's a beautiful
spit
piece of
of land,
property.
literally.
I remember every time there was a storm, I went through and checked the place before and after, and I remember some of the residents commenting on it. But let's face it, it's a beautiful
Oh,
place
it's a
to
beautiful
go out
property.
and look.
But you realize that if that comes down in a hurricane, they can never rebuild it.
That's what I'm saying. It's
So
a
they
very
never
unique
can
piece of
rebuild it.
property.
Yeah.
And it's for protecting neighbors like them and the neighbors that are along the Ludlam and west of Ludlam that we're jealously making sure that the Florida Power and Light property ends up being consistent with the neighbors.
I know you two gentlemen have some political ambitions
No,
No,
I'm done.
going forward.
I'm done.
No, you
I,
don't.
you know what's great is
No,
I
you
have
don't.
a
David,
great talk show.
David,
you guys come in here, we can
David.
reminisce.
David, let me tell you something. You don't do this talk show for fun.
Oh yeah, I do.
Oh no, he does. He does.
Oh yeah, I
he
do.
does.
I
Oh,
love
he
having
does.
you guys on. This is
no,
fun.
you don't.
Oh,
This is
absolutely.
work.
I would not lie to you.
Listen, it took, well, I don't know about you, but I thought 45 minutes to drive to your office northbound would be easy. I barely made it here, okay?
Yeah, we know
I
that.
shocked it took
Well, you
that
could be
long.
you could be in South Miami.
But anyway, what I'm going to say is this. All things considered, and I too have sometimes said, I wonder if I made a mistake incorporating Palmetto Bay, okay? But all things considered, I'm glad Palmetto Bay exists. I'm glad Cutler Bay exists. I'm glad
Oh, I think it's
Pinecrest
great.
exists. Don't get me wrong. I think, though, that all of our politicians, current, old, and you folks that think you want to run again, try and keep the residents of Palmetto Bay the focus of what's important. I personally have never, as I said a minute ago, I've never made money off Palmetto Bay. I've done this to better the community for all. And what I'll encourage you to do, and I know there's a lot of rancor right now in our local politics, our national politics is a different story. But at the end of the day, you know something? We're all Palmetto Bayans. And we all have to learn to live together for the future. So let's do it. Let's be firm in our convictions. Let's have our opinions. But let's also be nice in the way in which we approach the other side.
And
That's
the
really
thing,
what
too.
I ask.
It's
Okay?
It's
Look,
you can.
I'm never going to get all sides to agree on any issue. But
Can't
we
probably
don't
get
have,
your house to agree
but-
on one issue.
I can't get me and the dog
I
to
know.
agree
There you
on
go.
the
So I
issue,
mean,
okay?
you're never gonna.
And the dog wins in the politics, okay? But the point is that we have to do it. And I think politics, unfortunately, in the last 20 years has become so divisive that it's difficult to appreciate, okay? But as a person who's not directly involved politically, but close enough to the process that know, I would encourage you, and I encourage anybody else that's going to be running for office or who's currently in office, watch how you say things. I'm not telling you what to say, but I am saying watch how you say it, because how you say it often allows people to either accept what you said or to reject it before they've even heard the words you've spoken. So that's my feeling.
I
on
get that. I get that. I just want to go back to the Palmetto Bay as our founding fathers wanted it to be, which is stick to basics. Don't sit there and overtax the residents. Don't sit there and raise 3 or 4 taxes in a year. Okay, real estate, electric. What else have they raised?
Stormwater.
Go back to basics. Go back to what you guys originally thought was control of zoning, police, parks, and forget about the pomp and circumstance. And there's just so much. Oh, it's an hour. It's an hour. We got to go.
It's bread and circuses.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I always did, and I think that every council member should do this, is I always kept in the office my tax bill up on the wall. Because remember, everything you do affects that tax bill, and we're all taxpayers, and you got to think of everybody that way. But
okay, we got to go.
Thank you so much.
By the way, just to let you guys know,
Ed's got
really
to
quick.
come back for some other
Oh
stories.
no, you really
we
do. I
got
want
to
to
do
hear some more
Thalata.
stories. You're
Ed
invited
was
back in a
very
couple months.
involved with me on
Yeah.
Thalata. We can talk about the straw man. We can talk about the,
You can do a show when I'm not here next week. By the way, I will not be here next week. I'll be out in Vail skiing with my family. Don't anybody rob my house because I do have a house sitter. So I will
Have
see
you
you.
been checked out? Are you
Yeah, whatever.
medically allowed to do that?
I'm not sure yet. So I will let
Well, enjoy your
So thank you.
your vacation.
So everybody will be back in 2 weeks. If you know anybody, you want to push this out anywhere, do me a favor, do it. It's a great history of Palmetto Bay. I really appreciate you driving and coming down here. I'll buy you a Coke after the show, and or Diet Coke. And you're always invited back anytime you want to come in here, as long as you're not wearing that ugly green shirt. And
Hey, but it's St. Patrick's Day.
I
I
know,
was
I
going to
know.
wear a blue
no,
shirt.
that's a nice.
At
That's a
one
nice green
point,
shirt.
I was
Yeah.
going to wear a blue shirt, and then I said, "Oh, but I got to wear a St. Patrick's Day shirt."
Absolutely.
It's the only
So-
green shirt I
So
own.
no, I appreciate
That's a
you
better
guys coming
color.
in. Don't forget, in 2 weeks we're gonna probably have a Dade County Commissioner on the show. I'm trying to firm that up right now. If not, we'll have another special guest. And you guys, thanks for coming. Can we play the Rocky theme as we log off? Okay, cool.